All right, welcome back, everybody. Welcome back to the Thinking Talmudist podcast. Last week, we discussed Kol de Ovid Rachamana L'Tav Ovid. We learned the Talmud, where the Talmud teaches us that a person should always be in the habit of saying that everything the Almighty does is for the best. I may not see it, I may not understand it, I may not feel it, but I know it. And the more we solidify it verbally, we'll solidify it mentally, we'll solidify it emotionally, it will manifest itself in our lives. Today we're going to learn a different piece of Talmud, and that is, this too is for the good. This too is for the best. Gam Zu L'Tovah. Gam Zu L'Tovah. So we're going to get to it shortly. We're just going to do a story before we get to it. The Gemara relates a story about two famous Torah scholars who were saved from having a wall collapse on them. Ilfa Rabbi Yochanan havegarsi ba'oraisa. Ilfa and Rabbi Yochanan were studying Torah. Dichika luhu milsa tuva, and they were in dire financial straits. They weren't doing well financially. Amri nekim v'nezil v'neavad iska. They said to themselves, "Let's go and undertake a business venture, just like you mentioned, Mark, and earn some money. We'll make some money." V'nikayim nafshin efes ki lo yeh b'cho evyon, and fulfill in ourselves the verse which says, "But among you there will be no destitute." Okay. Azlu oisve toise gura ri'iyah. They set out, and in the course of their journey, they stopped and sat down alongside a dilapidated wall. The wall was about to fall. Havo kokorchi rifsa, and they were eating bread. Osu trei malachi asharis, two ministering angels came by. Shtam Rabbi Yochanan de Omar chad lechavre. They overheard Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Yochanan overheard one angel saying to the other, "Nishte alaihu hai gura v'naklatinu." Let us topple the wall on these two scholars, Rabbi Yochanan and Ilfa, and kill them. Shemanichin chaya olam haba ve'oskim b'chaye shah. Why? Why should we kill them? Because they're forsaking the world to come for this world. They're forsaking the world to come for this world. Why? Because they're leaving their study of Torah and they're going into business. And therefore, if they're already leaving the eternal world for the transitory world, maybe it's a good thing to take them out while they're ahead. Amar le idach shavkinu. The other angel replied, "Leave them alone. What are you bothering them? Leave them alone." Because there is one among them whose hour is at hand to attain greatness, and it is not yet his time to die. Meaning, he's going to still have a great moment, which is a very important principle. We're going to talk about this a little bit, after we're done this segment. But just to understand, the world is round. Everything Hashem created is round. There's a reason for it. Because when something is round, you're sometimes at the top and you're sometimes at the bottom. You have to remember that you're not at the bottom forever, you're not at the top forever. We all know people who once couldn't make a living, and today they're at the top. And we all know people who were so successful financially, and today they're at the bottom. We all know it's a galgala choser, it's a circle that keeps on coming and going and coming and going. There are companies that people thought it is indestructible. They're so wealthy, for the next 100 generations they have enough money, and they go bankrupt. And people are like, how is it possible? How did that happen? We think like Amazon. Oh, Amazon. Okay, no offense. Okay, I know he's a big investor in Amazon, but so we think like Amazon is going to be forever. But it was very interesting. They interviewed Jeff Bezos of Amazon, the founder and CEO. And he said, Amazon's not going to be around forever. Not going to be around forever. He says there's going to be another company that's going to take us over and be much bigger than us and figure out a better technique and figure out better technology. He says, but I don't think it's going to be in my lifetime. He says, at least when I'm around, we'll be at the top, right? But the idea is to understand that there's a time, it's a very healthy perspective for a person to have, to know we're not going to be on top forever. We're not going to be on top forever. There's going to come a time we're going to be on bottom. And a person has to know this. We'll see soon in 10 portions ahead in the book of Genesis, the last portion, or before that, a little bit before that, where Joseph gives advice to the king of Egypt. And he tells them, there's going to be 7 years of famine. So maybe during the 7 years of plenty, we should save up and we should keep it in a storehouse, because when the 7 years of famine come, we'll have what to eat. That's the first rainy day fund, right? The first piggy bank. Let's put money aside so that if, God forbid, something happens, it's not irresponsible. All right. That's not saying I don't believe in God. That's being responsible. It's like today, one of the questions people have, well, if I trust in Hashem, then maybe I shouldn't buy myself a life insurance policy. Right? I trust in Hashem, right? Hashem is giving you an opportunity to do something, right, at a very minimal cost to help your family should, God forbid, something happen. So it would be, I don't know if it would be irresponsible not to. Maybe it would fall into the category of being irresponsible. But definitely it's not considered a lack of faith to get a life insurance policy. It's not a lack of faith at all. Either way, so the angels here are going back and forth. He's going to have his moment, and he didn't reach his greatness yet. Let's not take him out now. The angel says, the ministering angel, let's not take him out now. Rabbi Yochanan shama ilfa lo shama. Rabbi Yochanan overheard this conversation between the angels, but Ilfa didn't hear it. Amar le Rabbi Yochanan ilfa shma mar midi. Rabbi Yochanan said to him, Ilfa, did you hear something? Amar le lo. He says, no, I didn't hear anything. Amar Rabbi Yochanan said to himself, Midi shami anov ilfalo shama shmamino lididi kaima lishato. Since I was the one to overhear this, and not Ilfa, the person he was sitting with, it's evident from this that it is me that the hour of greatness is at hand, and he therefore decided to return to the yeshiva and leave the business that he was about to pursue. Amalei Rabbi Yochanan said to Ilfa, Ehadar. He says, let me return to the study of Torah. Let me go and learn, go back to yeshiva. V'oki b'nafshai ki lo yuchtal evyon mekarav haaretz. And then I'm going to fulfill, the poor will never cease from the midst of this land, which is a different verse. Why? Because someone who studies Torah is not out making money. They're not out pursuing business. And it's huge. They usually do not go hand in hand, riches and Torah study. Rabbi Yochanan hadar ilfa lo hadar. Rabbi Yochanan then returned to the yeshiva, and Ilfa did not return. Ada asa Ilfa malich Rabbi Yochanan. By the time Ilfa came back to the yeshiva from his venture, from his business, business dealings, Rabbi Yochanan had been crowned already the head of the yeshiva. He already reached unbelievable greatness. Amar lo, upon his return, they said to Ilfa, I asiv mar vigoris, if you would have studied Torah all of this time that Rabbi Yochanan did, lo havi malich mar. Rabbi Yochanan would not have been crowned the head of the yeshiva. Rather, you would have received the appointment in his stead. Right? Why? Because you sort of relinquished your greatness by going from a eternal world into a temporary world. You invested, instead of investing in your 401k, which is your long-term investment, you invested in a short-term. You just, spent the money, eat and drink and be merry, for tomorrow you die, right? That's it. You invested in here and that's it. You didn't invest in the long term. Okay, to refute the criticism of his actions, Ilfa set out to demonstrate that his scholarship remained superior to Rav Yochanan, despite his leave of absence from the yeshiva. So he issued a challenge. Ozal tola nafshe beaskre disfinto. Ilfa went and balanced himself on the mast of a ship. Omar, he said, if there is anyone who can ask me about a brisa from Reb Chia and Reb Oshia, velo pashtinu le mimasnisin, and if I'm not able to demonstrate my clarity and knowledge of that from a Mishnah, nafilno beaskere desfinto bitovano, then I will allow myself to fall from the mast of the ship and drown in the sea. Okay? Meaning he's challenging everyone. Try to stump me in my Torah knowledge. Try to stump me in my Torah knowledge. Asahu Saba Tonole, a certain old man came and quoted the following brisa to him. The Omer Tenu Shekel Levonai B'Shabbos. He said, if someone said to the trustee of his estate, give a shekel to my sons each week to meet their expenses, and it would be appropriate for, in their case, to give them a sela, which is this coin, the shekel, or more than a shekel, since the family was large and it needed more than just one shekel. No stelem sela, then we give them a sela. V'im omar al titnu lehem elo shekel, and if he said, give them only a shekel, but not a sela, not more than that, einos lehem a shekel, we give them only a shekel, einos lehem elo shekel, even though it's insufficient for their needs. Im omar mesu yushu acherim tachtehem, and if he said, should they die, let others inherit the remnant of the estate in their stead, bein sha'amar tnu, bein sha'amar al titnu, ein noslam el shekel. He says, whether he said, give them the shekel, whether he said, give them only a shekel, we give them only a shekel. So Ilfa replied with the Mishnah source for the ruling of this brisa. Okay, there's a brisa that gives this ruling. What's the source for it? Omar lei hamani Reb Meir he de Omar mitzvah lekayim divrei hames. Who's the Tana who teaches this brisa? It's Reb Meir, who stated in a Mishnah that it is obligatory to fulfill the words of the deceased. Okay, we know people are very, very cautious that when someone leaves a will, this is their desire of the one who passed on to the world of eternity, right? If someone goes to the world of eternity, they leave a will. People are very, very, very cautious to fulfill that. Why is that? Why is that? Because there's a Mishnah. The Mishnah teaches us this, and this is the whole world. Everybody knows this. It is clear from the laws of inheritance that the entire estate belongs to the children upon the death of their father. Thus, during their lifetime, they should by right be provided with all their needs from the estate. However, since Reb Meir espoused the principle that it is an obligation to fulfill the wishes of the deceased in regard to his estate, if he deposited his money with a trustee, we can conserve the estate so that some of it will remain for the third party to inherit. Okay, so this is based on what Reb Meir taught us in that price. But now we're going to go on to the story that we wanted to start with originally, which was the story of Gam Zu L'Tovah. This too is for the best. For the best. What's going on? The Gemara relates a story about how a dilapidated house did not collapse as long as a tzaddik was in it. Amru olav al Nachum Ish Gamzu. They said about the man, his name was Nachum Ish Gamzu. Where does that come from? Literally, the man of Gamzu. Nachum was actually from a place called Gimzo. a town not far from Lod. He was popularly known as Nachum Ish Gamzu. However, for the reason given by the Gemara below, he wasn't called Nachum Ish Gamzu because of his place of origin, but rather he was called Nachum Ish Gamzu for a different reason, and we'll see now why. Shahaya Suma Mishtei Enov. Who was this Nachum Ish Gamzu? He was blind in both eyes. Gidei Mishtei Yadav. He was missing both hands. Kitea Mishtei Raglov, and missing both legs. V'chol gufa mole shchin, and his entire body was covered with boils. V'hayumuto bebeis ru'ah, and he was lying in a dilapidated house. V'ragle mitosu munochen bisfolin shel mayim, and his legs, the legs of the bed, were placed in pails of water. Kedei shelo yalu olav nimolim, so that no bugs and ants should be able to crawl on him. Because if they'd have to go through the water to get onto the legs of the bed, they wouldn't be able to do that. And pamachas hayamitos munachas beis ruah. One time, his bed was in a dilapidated house. Bigshu talmidov lifnos mitaso. His disciples sought to remove his bed from this house because they didn't want it to collapse on him. Ve'achar kach lifanos es hakelim, and then remove the furniture. So they first wanted to move him out, and then remove the furniture. Amar lahem, he said to them, Banai, my children, panu es hakelim v'achar kach panu es mitasi. He says, first vacate the house from all the furniture, then take me out with the bed. Why? Shemuftach lochem kol zman sheni babayis ein habayis nofel, because you may be assured that as long as I'm in the house will not collapse. Pinus hakelim v'achar pinus mitasa. So they did that. They moved all the furniture, and then they moved him and his bed. V'nafal habayis, and immediately the house collapsed. Amar lo talmidov, his disciples said to him, Rebbe v'chi me'achar she'tzadik gamurato, lama also l'chakach. He says, our teacher, you're obviously a completely righteous person. So why did all this happen to you? Look at your hands, your eyes, your legs, right? What's going on? If you're so righteous that the walls don't cave in on you in this dilapidated house, but why did this happen to you? Amar lahem, he said to them, Banai, ani garamti la'atzmi, I caused this to myself. I brought it upon myself. Shepam achas ha'isi mehalich baderech lebeis chami. He says, I was once traveling on the road to the home of my father-in-law. V'hoya imi masui gimel chamerim, and I had 3 donkey loads of food. Echad shel machol, one was food. V'echad shel mishta, one was drink. V'echad shel mine megodim, and one was filled with various delicacies. Ba'ani echad ve'amad li baderech, a poor man came and stood before me on the road. V'amar li Rebbe parneseni, he said to me, Rebbe, my teacher, please sustain me, give me something to eat. Amarti la, I said to him, Hamtein ad she'efrek min hachamor, wait until I unload some food from the donkey. Lo ispakti lifrok min hachamor ad sheyotze nishmaso. I didn't even have a chance to unload the donkey before his soul departed, and the man died from hunger. Holachti v'nofalti al panav. He says, I went and I fell on his face. Ve'amarti einai shelo chasu al inecha yosomu. He says, these eyes that saw your plight and took no pity, meaning I didn't move fast enough, these same eyes should become blind. Yodai shelo chasu al yodecha yiskadmu. And let my hands, which took no pity on your hands, let them be cut off. Raglai shelo chasu al raglecha yiskatu. And my legs that took no pity on your legs, let them be cut off. Vilonis karadati, and my mind did not rest. He couldn't get over it. Ad she'amarti kol gufi yemoleshchin, until he said, let my entire body be covered with boils. Amruloi, his disciple said to him, Oy lanu shiraynucha bekach. Woe to us that we have seen you like this. They saw their great teacher, their great master, who was in such a sad state with no arms, no legs, no eyes, and boils all over his body. Woe to us that we have seen you like this. Amar Lam, he said to him, no, you got it all wrong. Oy li im loyri isuni bikach. Woe to me had you not seen me like this. All right, this is the way he lived his life. Imagine living your life, no complaining, no worries about, oh, I got to go for treatments. This guy had no hands, no legs. He had no eyes, and he was happy about it. Why was he happy about it? Because he felt that this was an atonement, so to speak, for not speedily enough caring for someone else's plight. I don't know anybody alive today who would say, yeah, I'll do the same thing. Let me ask for that. No, I want to be healthy. I want to have a good livelihood. I want to make sure that I'm able to see. If I have just one little something, or like a run to the doctor, quick check me out, make sure everything is okay. We're very conscientious about our health. We're very conscientious about making sure that our well-being is well kept. The Gemara now relates the origin of the name Gamzu. Amai karule Nachum Ish Gamzu. And why did they call him Nachum Ish Gamzu? They call Milso Dahavi Solkale, because whatever would happen to him, even a seeming misfortune, he would say, Omar Gam Zu L'Tovah. He would say, this too is for the best. Gam Zu L'Tovah. Everything that happened to him, anything that transpired in his life, any misfortune, Gam Zu L'Tovah, this is also for the best. The Gemara relates an example of this. Zim Nochad, one time, Bo L'Shedurei Yisrael Doiroin Lebe Kesar. The Jews wanted to send a gift to the court of Caesar. Amru Man Yezal, they said, who's going to go and deliver this gift to the Caesar? Yezal Nachum Ish Gamzu. Nachum Ish Gamzu is our representative. He was a righteous person. He was a scholar. He was a great man. He should be the representative. He should go. Dimelumad bin Nisin, who he was accustomed to great miracles performing to him on his behalf. He's the right guy. Shadru biyadei milo sifta de avonim tovos margolios. They sent with him a chest filled with precious stones and pearls. So here's Nachum Ish Gamzu. He's traveling to the Caesar to deliver this great gift. Azal, he went. Bas Bahudira, on his journey, he spent a night in an inn, in a residence. Bilele kam mohanoch dayuri. During the night, the host arose, vishaklinu bisifte, and he took his chest and emptied out the gems. He stole the chest from Nachum Ish Gamzu. He was sleeping. Umlunhu be'afra. What did he fill it up with? He filled it up with dirt. Lemachar kichazinu amar Gam Zu L'Tovah. The next day, when Nachum Ish Gamzu woke up, he looks at the chest and he sees that it's full of earth. No more gems, just earth, dirt. What did he say? Gam Zu L'Tovah, this too is for the best. Ki matahasam, when he arrived there at the palace to deliver this treasure to the Caesar, Sharinu le sifta, they untied the chest. Chozanu de malu afra, and they saw that it was filled with dirt. Boy malka lemiklite lekulu. The emperor was enraged, and he wanted to kill them all the Jews. Omar ka michayechu bi Yudai. The Jewish people are mocking me. This is what they send me. They send me an insulting gift. They send me dirt. That's what they sent. Omar Gam Zu L'Tovah. Nachum said, Gam Zu L'Tovah, this too is for the good. Asa Eliyahu. Elijah the prophet then came because he saw that he was genuine, he was real in his belief that this too is for the best. Hashem never lets us down. Admi le kichad minayu. So Elijah the prophet appeared to him, to the Caesar, as one of them, as one of the disguised Roman officials. Amar le, Elijah says to Caesar, Dilma ha afra me afra da Avram avuanhu. He says, perhaps this dirt is from the dirt of their father Abraham, which he used during the war against the four kings. Vichi havishade afra, and when Abraham would throw the dirt at his enemy, havu saife, it would turn into swords. Gile, and when he threw straw, havi giri, it would turn into arrows. As the verse states in Genesis, in Isaiah, talking about Genesis 14, he says he made his sword like the dirt, his bow like wind-blown straw. Havyo chad midinto delo matzu lemiksha. There was one city that the Romans had not been able to conquer. Bodku mine v'kovshu. They tested some of the dirt against the city. It means they took the dirt and they threw it. And indeed, they were able to conquer that city because the dirt was a magical dirt. Ailu lebe gnoze, and after their victory, the emperor put these weapons, these swords, into his treasure vault. Umulu lisifte avonim tovos umargolios. And what did he do? He took Nachum Ish Gamzu's treasure chest and filled it up with the most precious stones and pearls in gratitude for this wonderful gift that now assisted him in his victory. Vishodru bikra rabba, and sent him off with a great honor. Ki osu bisu bahu diura. When Nachum and his party were going home, they again spent the night in the same residence. Amarle, the hosts of the place said to Nachum, "My isis behadach. What did you bring with you to the Caesar? The avdi lach yikara kuli hai, that they accorded you such a great honor." He says, "What did you bring to him?" Amar Lahu, Nachum said to him, "My deshakli mehach amte lahasam sirchi l'darayu. Whatever I took from here, I brought there to the palace." I mean, he didn't even talk about what it was. Whatever came with me, I brought to the palace. Satru l'dirayu. They immediately demolished the entire hotel, the entire inn. Ve'atminu l'bei malka, and brought the rubble to the royal palace. Because they figured if this dirt has special powers, that it made these weapons, then let's bring them more, and then we'll get this honor. Amrule, they said to the Caesar, Hi Afra, the Isis Hacha, mididanu. He says, the dirt that Nachum brought you, it was really from us. We have this miraculous earth. They tested it in battle, and it did not perform as Nachum's did. And they executed those residents for attempting to defraud them. So there's a lot to unpack here. Okay? So firstly, we have to understand we're living in a world where we are convinced that everything is tangible, everything is physical, right? We hold keys, right? So we have keys. These keys are very real because I feel them. I'm holding them, right? They're real. But the truth is that there's another power, another dimension that is not visible to the eye. It's not visible to the eye. And it's, when people think like, oh, I know exactly how this is going to work out. 9 out of 10 times it doesn't work out the way maybe even 10 out of 10 times. It doesn't work like that. There's another layer of blessing on the physical things that we're so confident of. How many times do we have money and before you blink an eye, it's gone? And other times that there's blessing in it. And it's like, I thought I spent it already. I thought it was running out. And there's blessing in it. What? It's just it's a number. It's not a number. There's a coding that's invisible to us, a spiritual life to everything that's physical. Yes, this same dirt was taken from the same place, but you know what? The spiritual coding around it was different. Where does that spiritual coding come from? That comes from above. We see, for example, the miracles that God performed for the Jewish people in our exodus from Egypt. The Egyptians had they had the most powerful necromancers. They had magicians. They had the most powerful in the world. When Moshe and Aaron threw the stick and the stick became into a snake, the Egyptian magicians were able to do the same. But when they grabbed the tail and it became back into a stick, that they couldn't do. There was a level above that we experienced because, yeah, you can have certain access, but you don't have full power. There's a I don't want to call it dark magic, but there is a force of evil that also has access to that spiritual layer. I'll tell you an amazing story. There's a rabbi of blessed memory. I know this rabbi. I knew him well. He lived not far from me. I'm not going to say his name. But I heard this on a private recording that he spoke to a bunch of rabbis. And he said that he was a teacher, a rabbi in a school. And rabbis in schools, as we mentioned, those who study Torah are not known to be very wealthy. So he would go every Saturday night after Shabbos. He would go with a friend or two, and they would go down to Atlantic City, and they would gamble. And he said that he was making hand over fist. He said one Saturday night he came back with $30,000. And the next week it was $20,000, and the next week it was unbelievable amounts. And he was tipping people, and there was like sort of this like unbelievable success that he was seeing. It's like now he can go teach his students without worries of finances. He doesn't need to worry of how he's going to make ends meet. And it was a great thing. He would go every Saturday night, and he would go l'shem shamayim, for the sake of heaven. I'm going so that I can provide food for my family and that I can teach properly. And then one time he was in synagogue and he opened up a book, Sefer Kav HaYashar. After I heard the story, I went and bought the book. And the Kav HaYashar says an amazing thing. He says that you have to be careful because the powers of evil can also bring you success. But all of that money is tainted. All of that money, he says, now I don't need to ask for discounts from yeshiva for tuition. I can pay full tuition. Now I can do things that I couldn't have done till now. It's all forces of evil. Forces of evil sometimes give the good life so that it becomes tainted. He said he never walked back in to a casino ever again. Never stepped foot in. And they would call him, they're like, we've never had anybody who just suddenly stopped. Never. No one has ever done it. They stop when they have nothing left. But you don't stop when you're winning. As soon as he learned that Kav HaYashar, never gambled again. Because it's not about the dollars and cents. It's about the forces of holiness versus the forces of evil that are behind it. And when a person, we learned this, where did we learn this? We learned this in our parsha this week. That an animal has no power to hurt or injure a human being unless spiritually they've lost their godly image. They lost their tzelem Elokim. Someone who has a high level of tzelem Elokim, someone who has a high level, meaning they're spiritual, there's a spiritual glaze over them. Such a person, no animal can harm them. And we see the story in the Talmud. The Talmud says of one of the great sages, he was in the middle of praying and a snake bit him. Didn't feel it. What do you mean you don't feel it? How do you not feel it? He was so immersed in his conversation with God. It had no influence, no impact on him. There's a spiritual, what happened with the Jewish people when they were leaving Egypt, all of the miracles, the 10 plagues that were brought upon the Egyptians, but then the miracles of the splitting of the sea. It wasn't nature. There was a layer beyond nature. One of my favorite things to do in my spare time, I don't have much spare time, but my children, sometimes they like to watch some videos. So I like to show them videos of like the 6-Day War, the Yom Kippur War, maybe soon the 12-Day War. We'll be able to watch that video when it comes out. And it's amazing to see how none of the victories of the Jewish people were ever natural. It was supernatural. It didn't make sense. It did not make sense. Do you know that Israel only had about 190 planes in the 6-Day War? 190. That's it. And they figured out, obviously Hashem sent them siyata d'shmaya, assistance from above. They figured out how to refuel these planes and rearm them in under 8 minutes. So the plane would land, they would pull the brake, they would open up the top, the guy would run up, feed the pilot, give him something that he. Meanwhile, they were filling up the gas, putting munitions back on the plane in less than 8 minutes. It's a record. And the plane was back in the air. And they'd go round 2 to Egypt. Like the miracles of like, they were flying 30 to 50 feet above the water. Not more. So that the radars cannot detect them. And the miracles, because we're used to a world of physical, kinetic, dimensions, kinetic war. But there's a whole different realm that we witness as Jews, and that is the spiritual protector of the Jewish people. So while it's extremely important for us to have an IDF and an IAF, the Israeli Air Force and the Israeli Defense Force, very important. It's equally important to have the spiritual protector as well, and that's the study of Torah. And they have to work hand in hand. And if you want to know why there's a struggle today, where they're saying, oh, everyone has to carry the equal share, and everyone has to serve in the military, it's not true. As is, not everyone serves in the military. Even those who are not studying Torah. You have people going to medical school, they're exempt. The people going to law school, they are exempt. You have people who are innovators, they're exempt. There are many exemptions. Oh, Torah study. Because you're always going to have that struggle between the forces of physical and the forces of spiritual. You're always going to have that struggle. Splitting of the sea. Right? It's not the first time that you were able to make water split, but then there was another layer of miracle. Vayavru bayom b'socha yabasha. They crossed the sea on dry land. How does that happen? Now that's a higher level miracle on dry land. Because if you just move away the water, I know I went to the beach, during the intermediary days of Chol HaMoed Sukkot just 2 weeks ago. I took my children to the Galveston to the Gulf of America, and what's very interesting is that when you step on the sand, right after the water, the tide comes in and it goes back out, you sink right in, right? Even if it's 10 minutes later, you sink right in. Even if it's an hour later, you'll sink right in, right? And the water comes and washes it again, irrigates it, so to speak. And imagine the entire Jewish people are walking in such sand with all of their donkeys, with all of their wagons, with all of their riches. How are they going to make it across the sea? It's impossible. Everything is going to get stuck in the sand. Right? You put your feet in and it sinks right in. Vayavru basoch hayom bayabasha. There was an extra coating of spiritual protection. It wasn't just a physical victory. It was a spiritual victory. And you know what happened when the Jewish people were in the desert? They were protected on all four sides from dangerous animals. They were protected on all four sides from enemies, that when the Amalekites would send in an arrow, the arrow would go right back. It would rebound right back and kill them. Snakes couldn't, there are a lot of snakes and scorpions in the desert. The Jewish people had a cloud beneath them. They had a cloud above them. It's very, very hot in the desert. They had a cloud protecting them from all sides. 6 days, the 6 sides protecting the Shabbos inside, the Jewish people that are inside. You have the 6 dimensions, 4, 1, 2, right? That's the 6 days. Our sages tell us that those 6 days make up the 7th day. Sheishes yamim ta'avod, 6 days work. Yom HaShvi, Shabbos. It's a day of rest. That's where all of that gets its life from what's inside it. Right? If you want success during the week, all of our success comes from Shabbos. Ki hi mikor habracha. It is the source of all blessing. That's the great gift that we have in Shabbos. Shabbos is that spiritual coat where we say, you know what, during the whole week, physical, trying to get my job, trying to make a sale, trying to make a new connection, trying to network, trying to this, trying to that. Shabbos, we say we let go of everything. We're living in a spiritual realm now. No more having to run, no more having to try, no more having to this, no more. We just let go. And that's, I think, something very, very powerful we can learn from Nachum Ish Gamzu. He realized, on a physical level, it's challenging to me. But I want to infuse it with something which is that spiritual coating. Gam Zu L'Tovah. This. I'm experiencing something which is painful. This too is for the best. How? I have no idea. It doesn't make a difference. I'm not trying to figure out how God operates his world. I'm trying to infuse another coating of spirituality. And life is not always going to be easy for us to understand, and not always going to be that charmful for us to just say, oh, it's another day in paradise. It's not always going to be another day in paradise the way we feel. But we try to manifest it by continuing to say, Gam Zu L'Tovah. Say it with me. Gam Zu L'Tovah. This too, this that I'm experiencing, that right now seems so difficult. Why did I get that parking ticket? Right? What? This too is for the good. I don't know how. I don't know why. But this too that I'm experiencing, it's a difficult thing for me. This too is for the best. My dear friends, have an amazing Shabbos. Thank you, Rabbi.